This lesson is on percent. What does it mean? And then we'll talk about how to convert it to fractions. Percent just means per hundred. Think of cents in a dollar. There are 100 cents in a dollar. So 1 cent is 1% of a dollar. Percent means out of 100. For example, 75% means the same as 75 parts out of 100. 50%, sometimes written this way, means 50 out of 100. That's the very definition of percent. Therefore, we can write 50% or 50/100ths as a fraction. It's 50 over 100. It's as simple as that. When we write 50% as 50 over 100, the fraction 50/100ths, we've already converted it to a fraction. The only thing left to do is possibly simplify the fraction if you can divide both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. In this case, we can divide the numerator, the 50, and the denominator by 2, because 2 goes into both of those numbers, and we could get 25 over 50. And that reduces it part of the ways, but we can divide again. We can divide 25 into the numerator and the denominator. If we divide 25 into this numerator, we get 1, and if we divide 25 into that denominator, we get 2. So the answer is 1/2 after you reduce the fraction. So when we say 50%, we're talking about a fraction of 1/2. Let's take a second example. 134%. That's the same as 134 divided by 100. There we've already converted to a fraction. We might try simplifying the fraction by dividing top and bottom by 2, for instance. 2 goes into 13 6 times. You have 1 left over, so you get 67. And if you divide the bottom by 2, that is, we're dividing the bottom by 2, we've already divided the top by 2, then we get 50. Now, in this case, the numerator is bigger than the denominator. Sometimes that's called an improper fraction, and we could divide it out. We could say 50 goes into 67 times. We could do the division. We could say once, subtract, you have 17. So you could say it's 1 and 17/50. The 17 came from here. The 1 came from there. Whenever you see a percent that's more than 100%, then you know that's a number bigger than 1, because when you divide something bigger than 100 by 100, you get something bigger than 1. Like we did here, we got 1 and 17/50ths is our final answer. Converting percent to a decimal, or a decimal fraction is what it really is just converting percent to a particular kind of fraction where the denominator is always either 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. It's always a factor of 10. For example, suppose we needed to convert 67% into a decimal fraction. Well, we know that 67% is 67 parts per 100. That's 67 divided by 100. So all we really need to do now is divide this out and express it as a decimal. Suppose we did long division. We'd say 100 won't go into 67 at all, we'd put a decimal point there and add some zeros, which doesn't make 67 any bigger. And we say 100 goes into 67 6 times, it goes into 670. That's 100 into 670, that's these three numbers here. It goes in there 6 times because 6 times 100 is 600. When you subtract, you have 70 left over. Bring down a 0, and you say 100 goes into 700 7 times. And 7 times 100 is 700. And the remainder is 0. We've left out one thing. We're supposed to put a decimal point there because there was a decimal point down below it, right down here. So the answer is 0.67. That's the decimal fraction, which is the same as 67/100ths. There's an easier way to do this division by 100. It turns out all you have to do is move the decimal point 2 places to the left when you divide by 100. For example, suppose we had 67% again. Let's just look at the number 67. To divide it by 100, we just moved the decimal point over 2 places to the left. But there was no decimal point showing here. Well, there really is one, but we hadn't written it. When you write 67, you could just as well write it as 67 0.0, which is 67.0. So there's where the decimal point is for 67. But for 67/100ths, that's the same as taking the 67 with its decimal point and moving it over here, 2 places. So it's really 0.67. So all you have to do is move the decimal point 2 places to the left. To the left. Not to the right, to the left. Let's review then what we had in this lesson. First of all, percent means per 100. But per 100 means divide by 100, so percent really means divided by 100. So, for example, 67% means 67 divided by 100, or 67/100ths. And you can convert 67/100ths as a fraction to 67/100ths as a decimal by taking the 67, that's this number, and moving the decimal point over 2 places to the left, and that's how it ended up here in the decimal equivalent of 67%. 0.67 is the decimal equivalent. We'll write that down. The decimal equivalent of 67/100ths is 0.67. So the decimal equivalent of 67% is 0.67. So 67% is the same as 0.67. This is the decimal equivalent here. There's the percent, and this is written as a fraction.